Take me to work. Oh, I love doing this, having to pull out of the garage. It's kind of funny because now I've got it trained so when it brings me home, it goes up the driveway, comes in, backs me into the garage just like I back in when I want to charge. So it's pretty neat. The tech is just getting crazy and gets crazier every day. That combined with how fast time is flying, it just seems like we're living in the future. Anyways, it's kind of a sad day. I found out that that motorcycle accident was the guy we know. It's tough. It's a tough situation. The young dude, just a good kid. I mean, I didn't know him that well, but I had seen him a lot of times, and it's just sad. And you just wonder what happened, you know? Maybe details will come out, maybe they won't, I don't know. But anyways, like I said, cherish every moment, and you know, it's a risk. I mean, they say to be afraid to die is to be afraid to live, and that's true in some respects, but there's other things that, you know, you have to be cautious of. I mean, riding a motorcycle is dangerous, and maybe it's, you know, something you love doing and it's your thrill, but there's a trade-off that you know, you're in control of so much of it, but there's a lot of other factors, road conditions and other drivers and vehicle condition and just so many factors. I mean, when I was younger, I used to ride mini bikes, and I was always super cautious. I mean, I was not the crazy guy. There's tons of guys we rode around with that were just crazy, taking big jumps, doing wheelies, all that stuff. But I was always like the very conservative dude. And then when I was younger, my dad did have a motorcycle that I used here and there. So I did ride around on a motorcycle, but it wasn't like, I wasn't doing heavy miles or anything like that. And I did consider getting a motorcycle at one point because my dad had Harleys, but I mean, the Harley trend was really popular like in the 90s, maybe the early 2000s. It seemed like everybody had a Harley. You know, every dentist, accountant, and construction worker had Harleys, and they were all riding around. But really, like, especially this summer, I haven't seen as many. I saw the other day like a large group of guys on bikes, but they were all wearing helmets, all wrapped up. And then later on, I saw a smaller group, but they were maybe 6-7 guys, and no helmets and riding loose, I guess you'd call it. And so I don't know, you just don't see as many. It used to be all the time, constantly motorcycles. It's just, I honestly don't know what it is that why drivers don't see motorcycles, you know, but they don't. Especially, I think the biggest thing is they're smaller sight, so if you're distracted by looking at your phone or doing whatever, you know, you have less time to react, and motorcycles, you know, can stop a lot faster than a car, and, you know, that just becomes an issue. So it's a sad day. Rest in peace. You know, it's like when people die, it's harder on the people that live, they say, and I believe it. I mean, I remember when my mom passed away. That was probably the worst, not That was the worst time of my life. And it was sudden. She had been not feeling well. And my dad was like, you need to call your mom. You need to call her and tell her she needs to go to the doctor. And so I called her. And she's like, oh, don't worry, honey. It's just, stomach issues. It's nothing, I'm fine. And I didn't usually say this, but that day I told her I loved her. And I'm so glad I did, because that was really the last time I ever really talked to her. So it was probably, that was like in the middle of the week, and then it was like 2 days later, 3 days later. It was like a Wednesday I talked to her, and it was Saturday. My brother found her in her townhouse, and she was on the ground, not responding. Got an ambulance. They took her to a hospital. She was living in Southern Illinois, Podunk, Southern Illinois, where there wasn't any like real facilities or doctors close by. So they took her to the hospital, screwed around for I don't know how long. Finally decided that they were gonna fly her to St. Louis, to like a university hospital where she could get help, because what it was a stroke. She had a major stroke, and they were gonna fly her by helicopter, and the huge storm came in. And I just remember my dad's not an emotional guy, but he had called me and he says, we gotta go, your mom, it's not good. So we hopped in the car and we drove, like it was like 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours from where we lived to St. Louis. And we drove right through that storm where that they couldn't take her by helicopter to the hospital. We drove right through the storm, and it was insane. It was like thunder and lightning and torrential rains, and the whole time my dad was crying. We got to the hospital, and my aunt and uncle had gone down there, and like the whole family. And it was just horrible. So when we first saw her, she was still talking, but she didn't make any sense. She kept saying, and I don't know if she was joking with my dad. My dad would be like, I'm your husband. And she'd look at him like, I don't know who you are. Who are you? And, the thing was, they were separated, and they'd been separated for years. And so I couldn't tell if she was just joking or if she just couldn't remember. And then she had I guess another stroke or something, and she ended up going unconscious. Meanwhile, we're waiting in this hospital, and it was like the worst experience in a hospital. There's like no chairs. You literally had to sit on the floor. It was cold, nasty, not even that clean. And I just remember we went, we were waiting for stuff to, what the doctors were going to do and stuff. And so we ran and we got a bunch of White Castle. And and I didn't know how hungry I was, so I got a ton of White Castle. And if you've ever had White Castle, it has a very distinct smell. And to this day, and that was 2009, to this day, I can't eat White Castle. But anyways, like, she had the second stroke, or more strokes, and they did like, they ended up actually doing a surgery on her where they cut out part of her skull because her brain had expanded so much, so swollen that it was pushing up against the skull, so they needed to relieve the pressure, so they took out a chunk of her skull. And then she was on a respirator, and they came in and they showed us the x-rays or what, MRI, whatever it was, and her whole brain was just like one color. It was like there was so much, I guess, blood that had gotten out into her, I don't know, a pop vessel, something, I don't know, but they're like, basically, before that, we're like, okay, well, maybe she'll make it. But we knew my mom. I mean, she wouldn't be anyone that would want to be a burden to anyone. And she wouldn't be one to live with a handicap. I mean, honestly, she would have resented us for the rest of her life. But then she had those other strokes, and it was obvious that she wasn't gonna make it. So I don't know who made the decision. I'm assuming my dad, to basically pull the plug for the respirator. And I just remember going in there, and she was so peaceful. But her breathing was really consistent because of the machine. And I remember saying goodbye and everything. And then I went, and there was like a nurse's station, and I could see they had like a monitor there, and it was like an old time type of monitor. And there was just, you could see her face laying in the bed, and she was literally glowing like an angel. And they pull that damn plug, and my dad kept insisting, he goes, go say goodbye to your mom again. Go say goodbye to your mom. I guess he thought, I kept saying, I said goodbye, Dad. I don't want to. And so finally I went in there, and it was horrible. It was like she was gasping for air. You could tell she was still fighting to breathe. Oh, it was bad. And so I didn't stay there long, and I got out of there, and I'm just like, oh my God. And then, she finally stopped breathing. It was a while. And again, I looked at that monitor, and there was her face, just so calm, so peaceful. She's a good person. And the worst part, so that Saturday turned into Sunday. Early morning is when she finally passed away. Mother's Day. So every Mother's Day, I miss my mom more than ever. Anyways, that's all I got for today.